Hey, and we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a very, very cold Thursday here in Johannesburg. We want to welcome you guys to the weekly green room. And we've got a wonderful guest, as always, an expert in her field that we will introduce in a second. But just welcome, everybody, and I hope everyone's safe. I hope everyone is, COVID-free, and I hope everyone's healthy. And if not, we wish you all the best. But yeah, these are very, very tough times that everybody is going through at the moment. And it's not just in South Africa. I think everybody has got their issues that they are dealing with in different countries. But today we are just once again here to talk about immigration. And that is what we do well. So I'm going to hand over to my partner, Trevor, for an intro.
Yes, welcome, guys. Always exciting to be here. Thursday seemed to roll over quite fast. This morning, if you're in Joburg, you'll know, or this afternoon, you'll know that it is extremely cold, and we are certainly facing a cold weekend ahead of us. But guys, in this space, the Induku Group is a company that was founded by Lenny and myself. And what we do is we help families that are looking to move to the United States of America. So if it is you that is looking to move to the United States of America and you'd like to become a permanent resident in America with the option within 5 years' time of being in America to actually become a citizen, then you need to get hold of the Induku Group. We have got exciting positions available that you could apply for, and on the back of that, you'll get yourself a permanent residency, or better known as the green card. And through this space, we have got positions for outside of the Live Your Dream program. We've also got things, for example, the trucking side, which is the Drive Your Dream. We have also got nursing, the Care for Your Dream, and of course, an investment visa, the E2 visa, if you are part of that business treaty. So we are excited to have you with us today. If you'd like to know more about immigration, you'd like to know more a little bit in terms of how you could find yourself and your family in America, then get hold of anyone in the Induku family. We'd love to help you and guide you through this process. Then maybe a few words on the green room.
Yep, as always, introduction to the green room started as we entered lockdown. And this was a great initiative that we thought of how to engage with people on immigration. How could we give people more information on topics that they wish they had more information on, at the end of their journey. At the end of their journey, they would go, yo, I wish someone told me these things. So that is what we do. We are those people that tell you those things. And we have got webinars that we've done, 56. This is number 57. 57 today, where we've got various experts in their field regarding immigration of how they can help you. We have chatted to people of relocating pets. How should I financially immigrate? We've had a few great ones of those. And we want to urge you guys to actually go to our YouTube channel and go and have a look at the webinars that we have done. They're obviously, they're labeled and you can go through them, which one will suit you. But this will really, really help you in your immigration journey. So we want to urge you to really, really do that. Okay, so today, as we've implemented in the beginning of the year, is that we have always brought in some sort of a fun facts or something about America. Obviously, in the South African space at the moment, there are a lot of push factors that are regarding immigration. So we always refer to them. You want to be looking at both of them, but you want to have something that is more of a pull factor than a push factor. All right. So today we're going to be focusing on some pull factors. Right. So on the programs that we've got, we are going to look at some things that make America great. Some basic things. You probably know about these things, but it's just to plant a seed in your mind as this is a pull factor. Let it resonate with you, and let's see where it goes. All right. So the first one is I'm going to go through there's probably 100. I'm going to do maybe like 20 of these things. I'm not going to elaborate on them because those will be just my opinions on them. But this is what ranker.com is listing as the great things about America. Religious freedom. Freedom. Number 3, the military. Number 4, you're free to speak your mind. Number 5, free elections. Number 6, diversity. 7, natural resources. 8, national parks. They don't have a Kruger Park, but national parks they've got. The landscape and geography. United, we are unstoppable. Yeah, they do have that uncanny positive attitude and everything, don't they? Number 11, the rule of law. Our universities, education is massive. Their ability to invent stuff, that is true. If you've got an Apple phone, well done. The space program, that is amazing. I mean, everyone's going to Mars these days. Number 15, sports. All the sports that takes a World Series, but just them playing it. Multiculturalism. It was a long word and I said it wrong, but I don't care. Number 17, the American dream. Number 18, American music. You know, if you've got an iPod, it's probably full of that. Number 19, Thanksgiving. That's just about eating, I think. Number 20, we have a free society where consumers control the market. Right. So those are just a couple of things to give you an understanding of why America is great. Everyone's got their own opinion of America is great or is not great, but we do immigration to America, so that's what you have. All right. So today, as we said, we've got another expert in her field that is going to give us her expertise knowledge about how to successfully immigrate. Trevor, you want to give us a bit of a welcome there?
Yes, Louise, welcome with us today. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. I can see you are in short sleeves, so I imagine you are experiencing a little bit of summer on that side of things. But Louise Wiles is with us today, and yes, she's the author of the book called Thriving Abroad. But Louise, maybe you know, it's always best if we just pass the baton to you and ask you if you could maybe just give you a brief introduction about you, who you are, where you're at, and then we'll dive into this amazing book that you've written.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for having me on the webinar today. Yes, I'm in the UK where it is currently, I think 30 degrees, which is very unusual for us. So it's hot. I'm in the coolest room of the house though, so that's fine. Not so bad, but yeah, complete opposite to you at the moment, I think. Yeah, so I call myself an expat coach, a change and transition coach. That's because I work in the area of change and transition with a focus on international relocation. That's because that comes from my sort of lived experience, which is that as a child I relocated, as an adult I've worked abroad, but then also lived abroad as well, relocating 6 times in the last 20 years. The last time back to the UK, which is where I am now. So I've got that repat experience as well, so coming home too. And so, yeah, I coach people about supporting them through the relocation experience and challenge, setting up their new lives abroad. And I also have a podcast, the same title as my book, Thriving Abroad, where we talk about the experience of international relocation. And the past year that has been particularly focused on the challenges of international relocation during a pandemic. There's lots of episodes on that. And then also the book, which I wrote 4 years ago, which is all about, the process of international relocation and lots of tips and insights into managing that successfully, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
So, Louise, tell us a little bit what inspired this book and these podcasts that you do, and obviously we also had a look at it. You update those quite regularly, like you say, with things that are very relevant at the time and space. But what was that initial inspiration to this that you do?
Yeah, so the inspiration for the book, well, I've been working as a coach. I had at that point I was working with a business partner she's since repatriated home and gone off to do other things, but we were at the time both living abroad in different countries. She was in Belgium, I was in Portugal, and we met via the internet through LinkedIn actually, and ultimately we did some research actually into the experience of expats, particularly the partners of international assignees, because a lot of our work has been focused around supporting international assignees who are encouraged to take up roles abroad internationally and often take their partners and families with them. So from that experience, from our own experience, we felt we wanted to write a book and share the insights that we had, from that lived experience, but also from the professional experience of working with people. I think one of the lessons and the insights we had from research we'd done and conversations we'd had with expats is that pretty much very, very big percentage said that they wouldn't change the experience, that they were pleased that they had moved abroad, were living in a new location. But the one thing they would change is that they would have done some things differently had they known more about the process. So that kind of set a spark in our minds about, well, okay, so what do we know that people don't know? So the problem with international relocation is you've never done it before. You just don't know what you don't know. You don't know the questions to ask. It's a complex process, isn't it? And there are plenty of resources and sources of support. I know you offer those as well for people going to the US. And I think it's really important to take advantage of those, but you also need to know for yourself the kind of questions to ask. And so that was the rationale for the book. And so the book takes people through the relocation process, starting with the decision, which was another reflection we had, that was often the decision is made quickly, particularly in organizational settings where people are offered a role. They often make snap decisions, and then, things go off the rails because they haven't thought through a whole multitude of issues. Not that they perhaps would have changed their mind, but the planning stage is really important. And if you haven't thought about what you need to plan and prepare, then you don't plan and prepare. So, so the book's all about that process.
So, Louise, so we've got a number of people in our program, and what I always say to them is, the only thing that they've got in common with each other is that they are going to the United States, which means that every person's scenario is so different from another person. I mean, how do you guys then, not trying to make it a cookie cutter type of scenario of this is how you're going to be thriving in your immigration. How do you guys, just to give us a bit of context on your 6 times relocations, how do you guys then formulate something that works for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're not providing a sort of, this is what you have to do, this is step 1, step 2, step 3. What we're doing is providing thinking points, I suppose, throughout the experience. So sharing some of our experience and saying, these are issues and challenges that we know people come across. Some may be relevant to you, some may not. So you may have kids. If you have kids, then your thinking process about the whole experience will be very different from somebody moving on their own. So, obviously the circumstances, the situation is different for that reason. But also, people move for different reasons. You've just given a list of 20 attractive things pulling you to the United States. Now, everyone will have reacted to that list differently. I heard you say parks, and the national parks, and for me that's a big pull because I love nature, I love being out in nature, I love hiking. So for me that's an attraction. For other people listening, that perhaps that won't be at all. So understanding what's pulling you to live abroad, but also what's pushing you, that's important too, and that's different from person to person. So the first part of our book, and if I'm working with people, it's about understanding why you're wanting to make this move. And often in an organizational setting, it's the job. Often in an individual setting, it's the job. It sounds to me as though the work that you do is around, providing visas to take on certain roles in the United States. So one reason for the move is obviously that, but there need to be other reasons as well beyond that. The kind of lifestyle that you want to create. What is that? And what does that mean for all of the family, not just the one person moving for the job? So there are a whole range of questions, but everyone's answers to those questions will be individual, different, and meaningful to them in their own way.
So Louise, tell us, if you had to sort of take your personal experience and that which you share in the book, maybe 2 or 3, what would you say are common challenges that most people face when they are wanting to thrive, overseas? What are those 3 common factors that you've seen during your time?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest ones is unmet expectations, or setting unrealistic expectations. So that comes back to sort of the planning stage. It comes back to research. It comes back to thinking carefully about your reasons for moving, but then understanding what the opportunity is likely to provide. And certainly from my personal experience, you know, I've moved 6 times, and at times my expectations haven't been met in the initial months. And I know what a big impact that has had on my adjustment experience, because, you know, I've had to adjust to something quite different from what I was imagining. So my first bit of advice around that would be, you know, do your research. Okay, you're not going to be able to predict everything. You can't totally imagine what it will be like, but research as much as possible you can, the sort of lifestyle that you expect. And you know, that probably links into the financial side of it as well. You know, we know from research into well-being that one of the most important fundamental factors for a good level of well-being, a thriving life, is financial security or economic security. So really thinking that through from the start, you know, what will this entail in terms of, you know, costs, but what does it mean in terms of, you know, financial income? What's the cost of living like in this new location? You know, I was listening to somebody the other day talking about a potential relocation to London. You know, salary was looking really impressive until you realize where this guy was going to be working in London. And so then the question was, well, you know, where do you want to live? Because if you want to live in that area in London, you're going to need a bigger salary than that. The alternative is going to be quite a big commute, you know, and so, okay, at the moment, not, you're probably going to be working from home. So that's another issue as well. You know, you're moving to a new location to then sit in your home and work from home. So thinking about, yeah, your expectations, but then looking at the reality and really setting realistic expectations about that. Then the other thing, and we have a whole chapter of this in the book, which we call the hotspots of relocation. So understanding what those potentially might be, thinking about your personal situation, and then, you know, thinking them through. Okay, you can't, you know, prevent every problem from arising, but there are a lot that you can minimize, mitigate with good planning, with good advice. So really doing that thinking too, and hopefully then you'll have, you know, fewer surprises when you arrive. Mm-hmm. And then the third would be around, you know, relationships and friendships and building that new community, because I think if you've never moved before, you perhaps underestimate how long that takes. So setting an expectation that it's not going to be immediate, that it's going to be quite hard work. You will have to get out and about, and that is particularly difficult at the moment. And that's one of the challenges expats and people internationally mobile at the moment are having. They can't go out and meet, you know, people in some countries in the normal way. You know, I was speaking to someone in Singapore recently, and, you know, she's been spending most of her time in a flat. She hasn't been able to go out. She's a teacher. She teaches online. It's a very small world for her at the moment, and that is really challenging. So thinking about friendships and relationships and taking time to reinforce those connections back home as well. You know, think about how you're going to connect with people back home, keep them in your life, because that's really important too. But then also, how will you build those new networks in your new location and build those new friendships?
Cool. So Louise, I don't know if these points are going to be same as the struggles that you just mentioned now, but obviously on to give people some context as well, you've then relocated 6 times, which makes you an expert in relocation, obviously. But once again, if we could put you on the spot to say, if someone had to give you the information that you know at the moment, so almost we want to try and convince people to go and buy your book, you know, or to contact you, you know, so give people 3 things that you wish you knew when you relocated.
3 things I wish I knew when I relocated. Okay, I think the first one would be, I relocated, for the first time I moved from the UK to Madrid. My husband had a job offer there, and I immediately thought, so this is a personal one, okay, this relates to the partners of somebody moving for a job in another country. So their partner is all set up with their career and their new role, and often the partner going to doesn't have one. And I saw it as a great opportunity to have a break, and didn't think much beyond that. And then for the first 3 months, I thought, this is wonderful. I'm having time off. I'm doing language lessons. You know, I'm not having to get up at 7:30 or 6:30, whatever it was in the UK. And I enjoyed it. And then just suddenly, 4 months in, I just thought, well, yeah, but I was 32 at this point. What is this going to be for the rest of my life? How am I going to make this meaningful for me? What am I going to do with this experience? So my first bit of advice would be to partners of anyone relocating for a role, think carefully about your professional life as well. Doesn't mean you don't go, but take time to think about what you might want that to be. And you might not know that right at the point when you're making the move, because you haven't been in the new location. You can't, you don't know what you don't know, and you need to be there probably to get used to the environment and to learn a bit about it. But then think very carefully about what you want it to mean professionally for you. And I would recommend, because this is partly what I do, but work with a coach to identify what it is, and then work out how, given the opportunities in that location, you can pursue something that is professionally satisfying for you, if that's what you want. I mean, that's another thing. Some of the research we did the big research into the experience of partners in 2012, and 78% of them said they wanted some form of employment or professional outlet whilst abroad. But that meant 22% said they didn't, and actually quite a lot of them were quite adamant that they didn't. So they've made the decision to move to support their partner's career, but also often they had families, young kids, and they saw it as an opportunity to invest time in their family and to support their kids. So it's getting real with yourself around what profession means to you, and what you want to be doing with your time and what's fulfilling for you. And that's different for everybody. So there's no right or wrong answer to that. But all I would say is to be really conscious about that.
Cool.
So that's one. Then I think probably the next one then would be to think beyond that those first few months. I think what happens when you move is you get, the job is offered and you're prepared to move, and you see it as that physical move from, South Africa in your case to the United States. And that's a massive undertaking from a practical perspective and an emotional one. And so you're very focused and invested in that short time, well, it could be a longer time period, but in that particular bit of the transition. And you don't think much beyond that until you arrive. And so I think it's really important to try and think beyond that and think, well, what is it we're wanting to create longer term with our lives? Because otherwise what happens is you move, you arrive, you settle, and then you perhaps sit thinking, well, yeah, this is nice, but not quite what I was wanting. And then you start, thinking, well, do we just accept this, or do we make a different choice and move on, which is fine. Lots of people do that, but that depends on how flexible you are able to be, how prepared you are to make different decisions and then move on. And we did that a number of times. We made some decisions, we moved because companies asked us to, and others we made very proactive decisions of our own to say, we lived on the island of Madeira for 5 years, and after 5 years we said consciously, if we don't decide to leave now, we may find ourselves still here in 30 years. Beautiful island, lovely place to raise young children, but not where we wanted to spend our entire lives. So we did make a very rational decision to make a move. And I think perhaps you need to be prepared to do that as well, and to be asking yourself, is this where we want to be at this point? Yeah.
Sure. Good.
Very good advice. Louise, so obviously what's on everybody's lips at the moment is this pandemic that we find ourselves in. So I'm sure that with that, there's a lot of shifting and changing, and probably over the last year, there's been a couple of things that you've highlighted within your podcasts. But this is obviously very real in terms of now moving overseas, going to live abroad. This is a factor because, the UK is experiencing COVID differently to America. America is experiencing it differently to South Africa, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are you specifically doing coaching for people just to also get through that sort of mental space?
That's interesting you asked that question, because no, I haven't, but I have been talking with someone about that recently. And well, I mean, yeah, within a general conversation, yes, but not specifically, sort of COVID related. But I think yes, as things develop, and as you say, so many countries have different experiences, different regulations about, how, or ways in coping with COVID. I think it's going to become more and more challenging, if you like, to move and to be internationally mobile. And so I think, yeah, it becomes another part of the decision-making process, understanding the COVID situation in the country you're thinking about moving to, and perhaps the history of it and their approach to dealing with COVID. Because, the approach in the UK is very unique at the moment and very different from, say, Australia and New Zealand. And I was just reading an article about New Zealand and saying despite vaccination, they're not expecting that the 14-day quarantine rules will change for the next year, I think. So whereas we're looking at, you can come in. So it's very different. And I think, yeah, you have to build that in. And I think your degree of risk is part of this as well, because I know from people who have been abroad, one of the toughest experiences of this year has been not having the freedom to return home or, whenever they need to. So sad situations of unwell parents or relatives, deaths, but then happy arranged family things such as marriages, and people just can't go to those events. And that is really tough psychologically. So I think people need to ask themselves, how would I feel if I had to handle that situation and I couldn't get back for those important events and I couldn't support, and it would have to be support from a distance. So ask yourself questions about those two areas.
Yeah, I think that's also, it's very relative. I mean, right now, we've in South Africa, if there's a funeral, you can only have 50 people in any case, so but I think it's what's important here is to obviously go through those processes, right, and look at all those things. So, Louise, I want to thank you for the time that we've had, and I'm just going to ask you one question before I'm sure Lenny would either close or ask you another one. But traveling abroad, when would you suggest one picks up that book and reads it if I was going to go abroad? Do you suggest that it's before planning the move, during the plan? When would be the ideal time for someone that is looking to go abroad to pick up your book?
So Louise, if I can come in here. So I was going to ask pretty much the same question. This is, what will it look like for someone that thinks, okay, I'll give this a try? Where do people start, and what does the journey look like with you guys?
Okay, so it starts at the decision-making process. So I'm really quite evangelical in a way about that, because I think an informed decision lays the foundation for a successful relocation. So if you have taken the time to research the opportunities, to really think through the opportunities and the benefits of a move, an international move, and identify what those are for you. But you've also looked at the challenges and the hotspots, and you understand those. So COVID, as we've just discussed, being one element of that, but there are a whole range of others, and decided which ones could be challenging for you and what your reaction and thought about those are, and built that into the process. That helps the planning process, definitely. So starting with the decision-making stage. And I always say to people, the yes/no decision, yes, it's important, obviously, because that determines whether you go. But more as important as that is all the thinking that goes behind that, because every decision you make and everything you learn is laying the foundations for a smoother transition. So, really thinking that through and taking time to make an informed decision. And then the next step is preparing. So thinking through all the practical aspects and creating a timeline. So depending on your own personal situation, that timeline might look different. People who I know worked with have had a year to plan, and others a month. So it depends on circumstances. But within that time limit, creating a timeline, thinking about the professional services that you want to employ to support you, and prioritizing those. So visa support, I think, is always a really important one. So, and financial support too. So really thinking about what kind of professional support you're going to seek, and using and having a budget for that, and seeking that support. But then also, so that's a practical preparation, but then there's also the emotional, psychological preparation as well. So just understanding that this is a period of change and transition. It takes time to adjust to a new environment, and often longer than you think it will. So understanding that, and we have a chapter about all of that in the book, talking about the influence of culture and how that impacts on your adjustment process. And I always say, it takes time to settle. So just knowing that and being prepared for that. And then the next step is arrival, settling in, building your knowledge of your new environment, creating a home from home, building that network professionally and also personally, and so building your new life in your new location. And that takes time as a process of adjustment. But hopefully through all of that, you get to a point where you're thriving and enjoying and really finding it's a very positive experience.
So Louise, just one last question from my side. Some feedback that people that have gone through your program and stuff like that, what is the general feedback that they get or they give to you?
That it's helped them identify the things that they wouldn't have known about had they not done the program and read the book, and there's a workbook that goes with it. So if they hadn't done that thinking, I think it's also about clarity of purpose for for an international move. So we really work with them to make sure that that's clear, because that's what carries you through. And recognizing that they're going to be highs and lows. It is a bit of a roller coaster ride. And if you're not clear on your purpose, when you hit those lows, it's doubly tough. So, but if you know why you're there, the reason why, then you can put up with quite a lot and work through it. So understanding that. And then today I had some feedback from somebody who's listening to podcasts, and what she was saying was it's just lovely to hear that other people are experiencing the same emotional reaction, because when you're feeling lonely, lost, isolated, uncomfortable, you can think it's all you, but understanding and hearing other people say, actually no, that's just part of it and you will come through this, is really confirming and helping and helps people. So yeah, so that kind of emotional support as well, which I think is hugely important. And I think probably pretty much everyone I work with, there'll be a time when we have upset tears at some point in the process, because and I think it's comforting for them to talk to me and know, and for me to say, yeah, this is fine, this is part of it. Overwhelm is part of the experience, but you will get through this.
That's good.
Very good points. So Louise, thank you for joining us today and being on the webinar with us. Don't you want to share the details that if someone would like to contact you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so if you'd like to email me, then you can do that easily. Louise at Louise Wiles, that's WILES.com. Otherwise, go to my website, thrivingabroad.com. That's the website which has all the podcast episodes, so you can look through those, sign up for the newsletter, and there's information about the book there too. So yeah, those are the main ways of getting in touch.
Fantastic.
Good.
Thank you very much once again for being with us, and we're not going to keep you any further. Go and enjoy that beautiful day. You don't have that often.
Very few rare hot days in this country, so yes, I will. But thank you very much for inviting me to join the webinar today, and it's been great chatting to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Louise, from my side. Thank you very much. Stay safe as well.
Yes, and you. Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe we have you on again sometime.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Please do, and yeah, it would be lovely. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Have a blessed day.
Bye bye, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.